This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the first ever fundraising forum. My name is Tom Brush. I'm the CEO of Advancement Designs. I'm here to help fundraisers, nonprofit organizations, and others, board members, try to create some clarity in what they're doing, help them understand some processes, ask questions, get help when they have challenges, and really try to help find a better path to help them understand how they can engage more people, how they can generate more resources for their organization, and ultimately provide more support for the people that they are trying to serve as a part of their mission. I'm excited to have a chance to do this. I appreciate the people who submitted questions. My hope is this will continue to grow over and above our first ever forum, and that there will be some solutions for nonprofits to help you move forward. Because I know that many of you sit at your desk, you might be in a one-person shop or a five-person shop or a 20-person shop, but you still try to figure out, okay, how am I supposed to do what I'm supposed to do? Here are the challenges that I'm facing. And no matter how much experience you have, likely you're still going to have questions about the things that you think are best, and how to best move your organization forward. For over 25 years, I worked in higher ed nonprofit and regularly would run into those things. I was hired to be the expert, and yes, I had expertise. And at some point, I had over 20 years of working in the nonprofit world and understanding what was going on. But there were always still questions of, would this tactic work? Is this the right strategy? Who do I talk to about that? And you don't want to go to your supervisor and have them say, well, we hired you to be the expert in this area. Events, fundraising, constituent engagement, grant writing, major gifts, individual giving, all of those things. You're supposed to be the expert, so you're the one that's going to figure it out. And we're not sure we want to go to our staff and say, hey, I just don't know that I've got this right. Can I share this with you? We might feel insecure that they might not think that we really know as much as we do, or that we still have questions. And if we have questions, how are they going to not have questions? And when they have questions, who do they go to if we're not seen as the person who has answers? Not all of them, but maybe at least some answers. So there are challenges out there. And our hope is that every other week, we'll try to help solve some of those for each of you as you move forward through your program. We today, in a little bit, we're going to talk about events, a huge part of fundraising for nonprofits, and one that there are some challenges and some opportunities, and something that we all look at and try to strive to do better at. But so we'll talk about that in a minute. And in the future, we have other topics. So I encourage you, if you are interested or you have a topic you'd like to share, or you can look at our upcoming forums and find out if there's a question you want to submit, or maybe you want to be a spotlight coach. You want to receive some spotlight coaching. We don't have any of those today, kind of short notice getting started, but in the future, you would have a chance to unmute yourself. We'll talk about your specific situation and try to give you some strategies to help you move forward. So hopefully people will find that helpful, and they'll be open to share kind of, here's where we are. Hopefully this is a safe space where we can share the challenges that we face, but also try to talk about what are the opportunities that we have to move forward. So you can go to my website. It's advancementdesigns.com. There you'll find lots of information about my experience, but you'll also find the opportunity and the schedule for what's coming up in the forum. There's also a free gift. So if you're finding some struggles with your goals, setting them or managing them, managing your time, there's a great free gift that you can download that will give you some key tips to sort of get you started along the path of how do we move forward. And hopefully this will be really beneficial, and you'll make this a part of your every other week as it works into your schedule. So with that being said, we're going to dive right in and start out with events. I love events and I hate events. Events have a lot of really great things about them. They can engage new people. They can create awareness. They can raise money. They can give you a better chance to talk to people about your cause. They can be fun. People can have a good time. They get to know who you are, what you're like, what your organization like, who the people in your organization, meet others who are supporters. All of those things are really positive things about events. And if you're really good at them, you can raise a lot of money. No doubt about that. And there are organizations out there who raise a ton of money from special events or fundraising events, almost enough to drive their whole budget for the year. That being said, there are also challenges with events. They take an enormous amount of time. You have to be unbelievably organized. You have to have a committed group of constituents who want to participate in what you're offering. You have to hope that they're not overwhelmed by all the events that are going on, by everything that's happening. You know, you go through your summer and there's a golf tournament, a fundraising golf tournament every day, if not two. How do you choose? How is yours better than somebody else's? What makes them continue to come back? How do you try to run these things so that they don't run you and run your life? Because they can be overwhelming and they can be tiring, and you can get fatigue from your supporters of, oh man, we've got another fundraising event and I almost just wish they'd asked me once, and I'll accumulate all the things that I pay for their events and just write them a check. And I'll save myself some time, headache, and allow me to open to do other things. So those are some of the challenges that events bring, and things that I think we always have to be careful about. Many organizations, this is their sole method of fundraising. This is how they generate revenue to run the operations they do, provide the programming they do, support their mission, and really support their constituents. But at what cost? And I think that's something for us to think about, is what is that return on the investment? Have we ever measured it? Do we know how much time we're spending on an event that's raising X amount of money? And then is that time worth it? Or could we spend that time doing something differently? Have we set goals for our events, monetarily, non-monetary, so that we have something to evaluate them against? Lots of things to think about as we consider running events and having them be a part of our organization and of our fundraising efforts. And that's all part of a strategy. And you really need to take a hard look at, what are you doing? How effective is it? What are the results? And is it the best way for you to use your time? Very hard to do, because all along that, we have significant expectations and responsibilities that are being placed on us by our supervisors, the executive director, the board of directors, major donors, everybody who has a stake in our mission and in our nonprofit. And so it's hard to turn away from the shiny new object, because I guarantee you, if you are a fundraiser with a nonprofit organization, a board member has come to you and said, hey, the other day I was at this really great event and they raised a ton of money and it didn't look like it was a lot of work and it was really fun, and maybe that's something we should consider. And you're sitting there thinking, and actually one of our questions, we'll talk about that. So we'll get into that a little bit, but I know that's something you're dealing with, because I dealt with it too. And I was probably the biggest offender. There was always something out there. I'm like, wow, we could just do that. That would be really cool for this reason and that reason and that reason. All really beneficial, and could be very successful, but at what cost? And I think if we're not evaluating and studying that, it's hard. It's really hard to understand where are we going to be in terms of generating revenue and maximizing our time, our effort, and our understanding of how we can be most successful at our roles. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into the first question. So thank you to those people who submitted these questions. And I think I tried to, while I'm going to attribute them to one person, there were some others that were similar. So I've kind of looked at some categories that I thought would be most beneficial for those of you who are either joining us now or are watching this on a tape delay. And if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to email me. You can go to my website, again, which is advancementdesigns.com, or email me at tom@advancementdesigns.com for more questions. And there's also a way you can sign up for a free immediate impact session with me that we can dive deeper into where you're at, where you're trying to be, and how do we get there. All right, so here's the first question. The first question is from Katie, and she says, I started a new nonprofit, and I'm trying to decide what our first event should be. What do you recommend? Well, Katie, that's a really good question and something really good to answer. And there's a lot of ways to look at what your first event could be. I know your first thought is probably, it's got to be unique. It's got to be something different. We have to schedule it on a time when there's nothing else going on. And it's got to be a success right away. All thoughts that we all think about. I mean, we're all probably sitting there saying, yeah, been through that, done it, tried to figure it out. So here's the challenge. There aren't many new events out there. You know, we can take things and spin them. We can just copy and steal, which is something that organizations do all the time when they see something better. But I would really encourage you for your first one of the key things is, and depending on the size and scope of your organization, what do you think your constituents would be interested in? What expertise does your board have that can be helpful? And third, how can you best spotlight your organization within that event? Because we can all run a gala, we can all run a golf tournament, we can all run a race, we can do some sort of drive, but if we're not showing the impact that our organization makes, how are we any different than anybody else's? And so I would encourage you to do the first thing, look at what your constituent base is. As a new nonprofit, likely you don't have a large constituent base. And so you maybe don't really understand what are the things they would be most interested in. But let's say that you do, for whatever reason, you've got a good group and you were organized, you've got a good mailing list. Think about what you think they might be interested in. Always look at what is their perspective and what is something they're going to maybe be interested in being a part of. Having an understanding of what's going on in your community is helpful. If there's somebody out there who is already putting together a great 5K race and it's swamped, and maybe that's not the right path because you might be challenging that. Or maybe that says, hey, there's an interest. This community supports that type of thing. We just need to find a different time to put it on because runners like to run. And so why not have them come and run for us and be a part of our fundraising event? So you want to look at all of those things. And I think then trying to figure out also, like, what is the price that you charge? What's the budget look like? How do you understand like where we want to go and what we want to do? And especially when it's your first time out of the gate, you want to make a good impression. You want to raise money and you want to have it be something that people are going to come back to. So understanding a little bit about what's going on with your constituency is important. Secondly, your board. Your board should help drive what you're doing. So if you have a whole group of board members and none of them play golf, a golf outing is probably not your best bet because they may just not either understand, they don't have friends who play, they don't grasp why would I pay to go play golf when I could just go walk down and play at a course somewhere else. They don't know how to leverage a golf event to raise more money. So you want to think about what are the skills and talents that your board has and how they can be helpful because ultimately, yes, you're going to do a lot of the work, but they're going to be key to finding sponsors, to finding participants, and to really helping the event be successful. So take a look at your board, see what they're into. And then finally, how do you share your mission? I mean, that's an important piece of what your event is. Again, a golf tournament is a golf tournament, or a road race is a road race. A day with your dog in the park is a day with the dog in the park. But how do you share your impact and how do you make it meaningful for those people who are attending? Because yes, you're going to grab some people who are key supporters and they're going to show up because, and it doesn't matter what the event is, what the cost is, they're probably going to be there. But you want to also identify those people who have an interest in your event, but don't really know a whole lot about your organization. So once you get them in, how do you continue to share the impact that you have? And when you have their focused attention on the day of that event, that is your first chance to make a first impression. And you want to come out with the biggest, best impact that you can provide. And that may be turn them from a casual attendee to maybe a supporter who knows? Down the road, there might be a board member that they would become, or a large donor, or they're connected to a company or an organization that that may help generate resources. So as you're thinking about your events, take a look at those things. How can you have impact? What experience and expertise does your board have? And what do you think your constituency would be earning for and would fit in with what's going on in your community? And I think as you do that and you start to lay out all of those things, those three areas, you're going to come up with what seems like a really good event. And I think, like I said before, people are doing great events out there all the time. And all we need to do is find one that fits within those three categories in a way that we can make that all work, and then customize it towards our own organization. And then I think you have a chance to have a really great event, and hopefully one that's going to raise a lot of money and help you move forward. So good luck with that. Hopefully there's some helpful tips in there to help you figure out exactly what you're looking for. Like I said, if you want to dig deeper into it or don't know how to do that information or not quite sure what your next step is, you can go on my website and sign up for an immediate impact session, and we can talk deeper about that and try to find some strategies to help you move forward. All right. Thank you, Katie. So now we'll move on to number 2, John. John's question: how do we raise more money at our gala? We have a good turnout and raise a decent amount, but we need to increase our revenue. We need to raise more money. I think everybody goes through that, John. We have this really good event and it raises money, but how do we take it to the next level? Sometimes there isn't a next level. Events can be capped where you don't want to price yourself out. Your sponsorship levels are pretty much full and they're probably not going higher. So that's something you want to figure out. Is you may have reached a point where the event is, you've maximized everything you can without nickel and diming people. And that was one of the things when I did events, I tried not to, there's a balance between every second they're being asked to make another donation or buy something or participate or be in an auction or a raffle or whatever. And depending on the price of your event, the higher the price, maybe you can do a number of events, but maybe you say, they're already paying a lot to get in. And that's really our big piece of it. Maybe we only have 1 or 2 things where they have a chance to spend additional money at the event. Maybe if it's a lower priced event, they come in and okay, they don't mind. You know, my sort of train of thought was whenever I went to a golf tournament, guaranteed I was going to spend $40. And I just sort of knew this is what they do. They're going to have, for golf, skins, mulligans, closest to the pin, raffles, all that type of stuff. And I sort of felt like as a fundraiser, I knew what they were trying to accomplish. And I would just say, look, this is what I've got to spend. So I'm going to take it and know that one way or another, I'm probably going to ante in another $40 to whatever this is, unless there's something that jumps out at me. There's this really cool silent auction item that I have to have, or a chance to, win a ton of money on a hole-in-one, and I think I can make it. Not happening. But so trying to understand, what is the maximum you can do. The other thing you have to think about is fundraising events are no different than how you run a business. There's revenue and there are expenses. And at some point, the only way you raise more money is either you generate more revenue or you reduce your expenses. And so you can take a hard look at what are the opportunities to raise more revenue. Again, you can increase the cost, you can increase sponsorships, you can find another thing to sponsor, you can find another activity for them to spend more money, or you look at your expense side and where can I cut back on my expenses without decreasing the value of my event. Because at some point people are looking at all the different fundraising events they can attend. What is the value you're getting? What's the cause they're supporting? And how is this any different than some other event that I'm attending or want to attend or could spend my money on? One of the greatest compliments we used to get for a golf tournament I ran was that, I had people say to me, we only do 3 events, 3 golf tournaments a year. And yours is one that we always put on the calendar because it's so well done. And so for me, that was like, okay, we are offering the right amount of value. We're generating about the right amount of revenue. And we're still able to put on a quality event. And I think the other piece in that is this goes back to what are your non-monetary goals and who's attending the event. Because your fundraising event might be made up mostly of current donors. And how often can you go back to the well? Or is part of that event a stewardship of those donors? And what's the value of that, of them having a good experience, interacting with other people from your organization, interacting with those people you impact? So think about that, is that it's not always about how do we raise 5,000 more, 10,000 more, $2 more, but what are our ultimate goals and how are we going to get there? And I would say the other thing is how you reduce your expenses is looking at gift in kind. Come up with a list of what are all the things that somebody else could provide that's going to eliminate one cost for us. Is there a sponsorship level that I could go to our food provider and say, hey, you know what, we're going to give you some visibility at this event and maybe at something else if you will give us a discount on the food price, or you would donate all of the food. Same thing with like drinks and alcohol or beer or soda. You can go to distributors, and many times if you give them a foursome, now there's a cost for that or there's a loss of revenue, but you could get free beverages. Maybe that's helpful, maybe it's not. Always check with what's going on with wherever you're holding the event and what their guidelines are. But really, as you look to how can you generate more revenue, it's either reducing your expenses or increasing your revenue. And increasing your revenue could be, can I add something more to it? But at what cost does that come? Is it enough? Because I've seen people throw in live auctions that everybody says, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. This is the greatest gift. And you could hear a pin drop when the auctioneer starts trying to auction it off. And everybody sits around in this uncomfortable feeling because, yeah, it's a great event, but you're starting to bid out, but it's such a great prize that the cost to get to it and to make what you want to make is too high. And the people in the room aren't ready to spend that much money. And now you've taken your event that was really great and you've added this component because you thought it would raise more money. And it really has kind of put a little chip into the armor of what you've got as an event. So I would say just be careful about that as you think about it. Try to find what that ceiling is. What's that maximum capacity? And sometimes you could look, you might say, hey, we have 400 people who show up to our gala and they're paying $100. But we need to generate more money. Well, maybe the option is you raise your prices enough that you're not losing a significant number of people, but you are increasing the total revenue and decreasing the cost. So if you only have 300 people who show up, but they're paying $50 or $75 or $100 more, one, you're going to generate more revenue. And two, you're going to have less expenses in terms of how much food you have to put out, how many chairs, seats, all that type of stuff, how many golf foursomes you have to buy from the club. All of those type of things are options for you to think about. Where do we go? And more attendees does not necessarily equate to more revenue. So I think you always want to take a look at those things and just have an understanding of where are the price points in your community? How can it be beneficial? But so those are some things to think about, is how you can raise more money, because you can always throw in an auction, a raffle, something else, but just make sure you understand what that's going to mean to the tenor of your event. And how much, is it longer? Are people staying there longer? And now they're like waiting for the silent auction that, half of them aren't really interested in, but they feel like they have to stay. Great question, John. So thanks for submitting that. So our third question is from Lauren. And Lauren's question is, I spend an enormous amount of time on events for what seems like a small return. What can I do? Help, she says. Really great question. And I think if we're not evaluating the time that we spend on events, we're not getting a true representation of what the return on that investment is. Because our time, whether as volunteers or as professionals, is valuable. And many people look at their time as maybe a greater resource that they have than actual money, currency. So you need to be aware of that. And I would say you start tracking it. Figure out how much time you spend You know, you don't have to do it every minute, but maybe you say, okay, this week I actually spent 6 hours working on this event because I was doing this, and this. Okay. And then the next week you start tracking it. And at some point you go down and say, all right, at the end of, as we get ready for the event, or the event runs and we raise $50,000, great. But we spent, or you as an individual spent 200 hours on that event. So the return on that, if I can do my math correctly, is about $250 an hour. I think that's right. Is those 200 hours, could those 200 hours be spent in another way to raise $50,000? Like if you had 200 hours, how many visits could you do individually, one-on-one with high-level potential donors, and what might the return on that be? So I think it's important, as I mentioned before, if you don't have goals, it's hard to really evaluate what's the return on that investment. So as you're setting up your event, come up with what are your monetary and non-monetary goals. And then at the end, while you're doing it, track how much time you're spending on it. And then you have to have an understanding as well of, if I took that time away from this event and added it to something else, would I raise more money than what I'm doing with the event? Would I engage more of our constituents than I do by running this event? Would I find ways to market or communicate or go to another networking event? Or what other things could I be doing that could have a greater return? And again, if you're keeping some sort of track of events, why not keep track of everything else? How much time are you putting on the other things that you are doing to understand what the return on that event is? And if you're not getting the return on the event that you want, now you make the hard choices. Is the event worth it? And again, if you're sort of finished the event and you said, oh, we only raised $15,000 and I spent all this time on it, well, that's a very short-sighted outcome of the event. If you're not thinking about who showed up and who were new attendees and who were return event attendees that we got to cultivate, or this really top donor got a chance to meet with this person who's been greatly impacted by our organization that could potentially turn them into a $100,000 donor, then your event might have been really worth it. And then multiple events might be worth it if you can make those connections. So keeping track of that so you can share. When you go to your supervisor and say, you know, this is how much time I'm spending on this event and I'm trying to find out if it's worth it, you can go to them with real data to say, either we didn't identify any new prospects, everybody there is already donors and they're not really giving more, we only raised X, I spent this amount of time on it, and if I took that amount of time and used it towards cultivating and soliciting individual donors, writing grants, trying to get other sponsors involved or corporate donors involved, recruiting volunteers, managing our board, all of those other things that you might be doing, you might realize that the return on the investment for the event is not worth the time and effort that you're putting into it. But it's really hard to say unless you take the time to measure out what does it look like, see where you're at, and then move forward. So use that, then you can share that data with your supervisor or your executive director or your board and have them help decide, what does that mean? Does this make sense? Are we moving in the right direction? Am I using my time to the most effective manner to help the organization be sustainable and generate resources? A really good question, and a really important thing that, that I've come to respect and value the data that you can gain if we take the time to look at it and measure it. And what is that data telling us? Because otherwise it's just anecdotal evidence of what we think, what we feel, how others think or feel, what their perception is. And again, we never know what's behind the perception that they're coming based on an event. Because a number of times I've walked away from events and said, oh my gosh, that was an awesome event. And people tell me, oh, it was such a great job. It was a great event. And then I go back and look, all right, I spent all this time and we raised $20,000. For some, that might be great, perfect. For others, it might be like, yeah, that seems like an awful lot, and that's not really meeting the needs of what we need to accomplish within our organization. But unless I'm measuring it and have some way to have it be quantifiable, it's really hard to go back to anybody and make a determination on, was it a success? Was it a failure? Should we do it again? Should we not? So take the time to figure out what is your return based on what your goals were. And then that'll help you make a better decision about whether that event that you're running makes sense or not. Fair? Hopefully that's helpful, Lauren. All right, our fourth question today is from Jennifer. And Jennifer's question is, we need to raise more money, and my board wants us to do another event. But the thought of adding to my burnout frightens me. What should I do? Well, I think, Jennifer, this ties in a little bit to what Lauren was saying, and I think why I picked it to follow it is that two things. One is, what was your plan for the year? And it's always interesting to me that we sit down and make plans and usually get them approved by somebody, or somebody else is involved, our supervisor, our board, executive director, vice president, sits down and says, yep, these are your goals and objectives. And I don't know that I've ever been at an organization where somebody's goals and objectives didn't total 100% of their time. Yeah, sometimes there's a 5%, other things as assigned, whatever. But basically they're telling you, here's your job. And at many of those same organizations, I've had people, and again, whether it's a volunteer, board member, supervisor, somebody else, some other staff member who says, wow, what if we added this thing? What if we did this? I think that would be a great idea to raise more money, or to help us generate more volunteers, or to do something as a part of it. And I think our question always should be, well, when we sat down and did our goals, this is what it was. And we were under understanding that this is 100% of my time. And we decided with some, hopefully, measurable way to say, this is what is most important. And now, in the middle of that process, you're coming to me to say, here's another idea that we ought to throw in. The question then should be to that person is, what are we eliminating of the things that we said were important? What are we getting rid of so that we can add this project in, or this event in? And is it really going to be is it going to achieve what we want it to achieve? And again, if somebody's just saying, yes, somebody else did this and this is the results they got, that doesn't mean that's going to be our results. And so we always have to be able to measure, to understand what might happen if we do this. And so I would also if you know what's the return on your investment of all of your other events, you can say to them, okay, this is what we're doing, but I really feel like, because when I go out and see these other donors, or submit these other proposals, or do these other things, we're generating more than what I probably could do from an event. And likely, like anybody else, the first time you run an event is likely not going to be the biggest success that you've ever had. Things are going to go wrong. Things you're not going to think of are going to happen. You're going to have some surprises that'll be great. You're not going to get the attendance because there's not an awareness and nobody knows what it's like and what is it going to be like. And there's just not that comfort in here's what you are and here's what we're doing. So really, if the question they're saying to you is, how do we raise more money? You need to be able to go back to them and say, this is our most effective ways of raising money. Could be an event, very possible. But it might also be if we spent more time on individual giving, if we spent more time talking with corporations, we spent more time researching and writing grants. All of those things could also be an answer to the question, how are we going to raise more money? Because we need to do that. Maybe we go back to the people we've already asked and we ask them again. Maybe we ask them to consider increasing their gifts. Maybe we start some other program. Doesn't have to be an event. Because the more events you add, the more stress you place on your staff, on yourself, on your donors, and on your volunteers. Because events are time intensive. There's almost no event that doesn't require a lot of work, a lot of marketing, and then a lot of follow-up to make sure that it all goes right. And adding that to your plate, adding another event as a way to raise money is significant. And if you're going to do that, what is coming out? And what's the impact of what's coming out? If you're going to say, okay, we're going to run this event, that means I can't do the 50 visits I wanted to do, or I can't spend as much time on our big fundraiser as I have in the past because this is something else I'm adding to my plate. So making sure you're kind of understanding where you are and what you're doing and how to make that work before you just dive into this is a solution because my executive director or a board member or a major donor came to us and said, we need to raise more money. And they think the answer is events. And I think there are many people out there who think, oh yeah, we can just run one more event. And I think if you ever sat down and tried to figure out how many fundraising events are run by nonprofits in your community, you'd be shocked. And at some point, you're going to understand that there's just not enough interest, financial support, and time to do all of the events that all of these nonprofits want to run. And most important, are there people who actually care to show up and be a part of them? It's great to say you want to run them. Who's the target audience? Are they going to show up? Will they be willing to pay what we want them to pay to make what we need to make? All of those are important questions to ask anytime you're sad and somebody tells you that the best way to raise money is to run another event. Could be, but it also might not be. And I think for you to know what is your experience and have data based on your events is beneficial as you move forward with your organization and trying to figure out what are the next steps. I hope that's helpful, Jennifer. Hopefully, Jennifer, yours and Lauren's questions were a little similar. So in between the two of them, hopefully you both got some information that was helpful. I think as you can see, events can be great. And some people really love them and some people are really good at them. I was at an event recently that was an excellent event. It was a gala and they did an amazing job. They had a silent auction that people were interested in and participating with really good items. Prices weren't out of control. Silent auction I thought was excellent. And when I went through and looked at how much they had raised, no matter how much time they spent, it was probably worthwhile getting all those prizes. Secondly, they just asked people for money. It was one of the most interesting, impressive things I'd ever seen. They had a great cause. It was a great mission. They had a great little video leading into it, and they had a personality make the first gift. And then to watch people just say, yep, I'm just going to donate this and I'm going to donate that. And it was a dollar amount and it just worked its way down. And by the time they got down to asking people for $100, like every hand in the room was going up saying, oh yeah, I can donate $100. Tables of people were raising their little bid sheet to say, yep, I'm going to donate $100 from a room of about 30 people who paid a pretty good premium to get in. Many were sponsors. A lot of people signed up for the silent auction. Some people participated in the 2 live auction events they had that raised $9,000. They raised $80,000 just asking people to make a gift and to be a part of helping change the direction of this organization and the cause that they were working for. $80,000 in 5 minutes from 300 people. That's a pretty good event. It's a pretty good effort and a pretty good use of your time and a great return on investment. And so now I know this isn't the first year they did that, and that wasn't the result they got the first year, but they built that into the culture of this is part of their event. And people can go there, show up knowing this is going to happen. At least some of them do. And how am I going to participate in it? And I think that's an amazing thing. And leads me to believe that that organization can do more on the individual giving side. Now, at what impact to that event? That'll be interesting to see. But clearly, they have people who are bought into the cause, believe in the mission, want to make a difference, and are willing to put their money towards it. And when you have those things all together, events can be unbelievably powerful and well worth the time that you spend on them. But also, they can reach caps. but great things to think about. And I think events are a really good thing. So if you want, I've answered my questions. Um, and as I mentioned before, we didn't have anybody sign up for the Spotlight coaching, so we're going to finish a little early. But on my website, there will be an article that talks about events. So you can download it and go through it. And it talks a little bit about some of the strategies, some of the challenges, some of the things to think about. Clearly coming up with a budget is one. I think coming up with goals is critical. Why are we doing what we do? And hopefully you can find some information about that. But I would also say that if you're struggling with an event or with some other part of fundraising, go to my website and I offer a free 30-minute call where we will do an immediate impact. How can we help you make immediate steps on a challenge that you're facing to help you find success, whatever that might look like? Because I know what it's like to be in your shoes, sitting there thinking, how am I going to get from here to there? Because I don't know the first step. Or if I know the first step, I'm not 100% positive that that's the right way to go. And it can be frustrating. And I also know that nonprofit organizations, people who work for nonprofits and who are fundraisers, take work home with them all the time. And they feel like it's never going to end. And so if I can help people find some clarity, some organizational, and just some way of feeling better about where they are and the thoughts and ideas they're coming up with, that's what I want to do. That's where I feel like I can make a difference in this world and help people with the experience that I've gained. So again, the website is advancementdesigns.com. Please go check it out. You can sign up for my newsletter, which comes out regularly and provides some tips and hints about the fundraising world. And then come back in 2 weeks. We will have our second fundraising forum. The date is Tuesday, May 28th. This time we're going to be at lunchtime, so it's going to be 12:15, and we're going to try to stick to that moving forward as best we can. So it's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and our topic is going to be fundraising plans. Those things that every time I talk to people about it, there's things they do at one point of the year, stick them on a shelf or sitting on their hard drive, and they never go back and look at them again. Well, we're going to talk about how you can change that and how you can develop a fundraising plan that's going to provide more resources and help your organization become more sustainable moving forward. So with that, I will thank you again for taking a few moments out of your time to either join me today or to watch this. All of the future fundraising forum sessions will be recorded and will be made available on my website. And I look forward to seeing you soon. So in 2 weeks, we'll talk again. Go in now and register for the next one, submit your questions, and sign up to be get some Spotlight coaching. Hopefully we can help you take your specific challenge and move it forward. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.